And so, the idea became, well, at the time I didn't think anything of it, but Gillian Russell pointed out that during the 90s, with the advent of mixed martial arts, all of a sudden a whole bunch of people realized that, these martial arts like karate and taekwondo and all the rest of it, they didn't do shit. It was just a bunch of hooey, right? It didn't work where it was supposed to. It's in the name, martial art. You're supposed to be able to beat up your opponent with the karate moves that or whatever, right? And it wasn't working out that way. These MMA fighters, they were basically using a combination of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and grappling, and whatever else worked, okay? It was just a hodgepodge. I mean, you could think of it really as like a ratatouille of fighting disciplines. Whatever worked, just throw it in the pot, boil it up some, and see what happens. And it's probably going to be delicious, and it was. MMA fighters, obviously, right? But what happened was that all of these Aikido, karate, taekwondo, and all the rest of it, they failed miserably. They failed absolutely miserably. And in this essay, Gillian Russell, says how, what was going on was that they were in this enclosed bubble. The karate teachers, the martial arts teachers, they were in this bubble. And they weren't getting any external input. And so, of course, they were developing these vices of epistemology, of theories of knowledge. Remember, theory of knowledge is how you understand the world around you, how you know about it, okay? And so the point of the term epistemic viciousness, a vice of epistemology, was that you were not getting input from the rest of the world. And because you weren't getting input from the rest of the world, you were starting to believe all kinds of crazy-ass theories that had no correlation with reality. There's a famous line that says that in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. The revolution of mixed martial arts during the 90s proved that, between the theory of these, esoteric martial arts like karate, taekwondo, aikido, whatever, between that theory and the reality of mixed martial arts, of really going out there and fighting and seeing what works and what doesn't, there's a huge difference. There's an enormous difference. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, I suspect that Gillian Russell failed as a philosopher because right in her essay she realized that if she expanded on her essay and her idea, a very, very good idea, and carried it forward, she would realize that her own profession, philosophy, was just full of shit. No different from these senseis who were teaching karate and taekwondo and the rest of it. All of these martial arts that had zero effectiveness in the real world, right? And that had been the victims of epistemic viciousness. They'd fallen for the vice of a hermetically sealed, just totally closed off environment of theory that had no correlation with reality, which is exactly what's happened in philosophy, which is exactly what's happened in just about all of our society. You start looking at, for instance, the politics, right? I because of the war in Ukraine, right, I've been, getting up on a lot of political theory, and so much of it is just completely divorced from reality. Just completely divorced. There are like these schools of philosophical thought, of political science thought, and they say, oh, Putin is doing this, but why is he doing this? Because it doesn't fit our theory, so he should be doing this other theory over here, and I'm really this kind of theorist. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about, man? In this conflict between Russia and, frankly, the rest of the West, what's going on is that Putin is trying to maximize the advantage of his country, moment by moment. He doesn't have any grand theory. He's just figuring out, well, this move might make it better for us, so we'll do this. And oh, over here, we'll do this. And of course, it contradicts these theories because all of these political philosophers, all of these political thinkers, these thinkers in terms of foreign policy and all the rest of it, they're captured by epistemic viciousness. And it's the whole society. Gillian Russell would have been a major philosopher if she'd taken this very simple insight, which she wrote about in the paper, and I'll link to the paper below, and expanded it. And even as you read the paper, it's obvious where the directions lie for very fruitful future research and writing about this particular topic. And she could have taken this critique of what was going on in the martial arts and applied it to philosophy, the study of philosophy, which has become completely discombobulated from reality. I know that because right now I'm in the middle of writing a philosophical project, but also in the other aspects of our society that are so important. Do you know why the United States is not going to get involved in a war with Russia? They're not going to get involved in a war at all, and they want to avoid it at all costs. Because you see, the Pentagon is like that the dojo of the 70s and 80s that was teaching their martial art. And they've gotten a good look at somebody who's actually doing MMA. And they're realizing that they'll lose, that all their theories would be shattered and destroyed if they went up against the Russians. The Russians would annihilate them. No different than when you see these videos of MMA fighters going up against some martial art expert, some sensei of something, and just beating the shit out of him in about 3 seconds, And these guys, right, these martial art gurus, right, claim that, if they just look at you with their tai or kai or ki or something, some Asian word, right, they'll just stare at you and just look at you and you'll die. And they'll just stare at a locomotive coming at them and just raise their hands and stop it. And you're like, what the hell is going on? And the thing is, I remember in the 80s, man, when I'd hear my sensei, riding, winding us up and telling us that once we got to be really, really good at karate, we were practically invincible. And we believed this shit. And, Gillian Russell, in her essay, she talks about her own experience in that regard. And she fell for that same scam too. And the funny thing is that probably those sensei masters, those karate masters, martial arts masters, whatever the hell they were, right? They probably believed their own bullshit too. See, because a lot of people say that, they were, con men, they were trying to crook people. No. See, the con man is aware that he's doing a con, and so he's always thinking of how to get as far away as possible once the game is up, okay? But when you truly believe something foolish, you think that you're in the right. And all of these sensei, and all of these masters, and all of these experts in medicine, and geopolitics, and the military, and all the rest of it, they have no intention of running away. Because they think that they're in the right. That's why it's a vice, it's a viciousness. They have been so closed off from reality, from the world, that they don't understand what is happening. And that's something that I've been struggling, quite frankly, to understand. Why are all these experts getting things so consistently wrong? Why is it that some loser like me is more on the ball about what the hell is going on than all these guys with PhDs in foreign policy and all the rest of it? What's going on? It's epistemic viciousness. It's being sealed off in theory and having no interaction with reality. In fact, avoiding interaction with reality. Because, all of these senseis, all these martial arts masters, as soon as they realized what was going on with MMA, they stopped doing these videos of them trying to fight MMA fighters and sealed themselves off even further. And that's the thing that I'm very worried about. I was going to say I was kind of worried about. Actually, no, I'm terrified that this was going to happen. That more and more of the elite groups in the West are going to seal themselves off even further from reality. And so once the battle comes, they will be so fragile and so disconnected from reality that reality will annihilate them utterly with just a little flick of the finger. And that's what happens. Another a guy who came up with the notion, Nassim Taleb, right? I mean, an arrogant shithead, real annoying fuck, but a smart man, and he came up with very good insights. And anti-fragility is one of them. See, the notion that there are fragile systems that can break down at just the flick of a finger. There are robust systems that you know that they are built strong, very armored, and there are systems, anti-fragile systems, that the more you pressure them, the stronger they get. And we know that, for instance, our own muscles and skeleton. Yeah? The more we pressure our muscles by exercise and all the rest of it, the stronger we become. An anti-fragile system is what we should be striving for. But what has happened is, because of the epistemic viciousness of our elites and of our entire society, quite frankly, we have become fragile, extremely fragile. And our society could potentially collapse very rapidly with just, like I said, just a little flick of the finger. It's not going to take much, and it's because of this. It's important to understand why this is happening. That's why I'm doing this video. And it's important to understand the philosophical underpinnings that has led us to this fragility that we are experiencing. I mean, look at our society. Look how fragile it is. If you say the wrong thing, people throw a complete hissy fit. They are so fragile in their thinking that they cannot contemplate somebody being a little bit deviant or thinking slightly differently on a particular issue. They have a complete hissy fit. And what happens? We go quiet. We say, it's not worth it, or, I'm afraid for my job or my reputation. So, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to say anymore. Or many times, or often as not, you refrain from saying anything to begin with because you know what's coming. And this is what creates epistemic viciousness. There's no challenge. Nobody is challenging the bullshit. And because nobody is challenging the bullshit, the system becomes more and more fragile. That's basically what is happening to our entire society. Our society, which was once very robust, very strong, very anti-fragile, well, it has become extraordinarily fragile because of epistemic viciousness. If you understand this concept, I think a lot of things will become clear. And it's a pity, like I said, that Gillian Russell didn't develop this further, but of course, it's understandable why. She got a PhD from Princeton University in philosophy. She wanted to get like a nice job, a tenured job. You look at her CV and she's done very well for herself, but of course, she's done very well for herself by never questioning her own field. She herself has fallen for epistemic viciousness because at some fundamental level, she realized that if she questioned anything, she would be excluded. And her fear of being excluded is why she didn't develop this very, very good theory. It's why she is a minor one-hit wonder in terms of philosophy instead of a major thinker. This message is for Aidan Aslan. He is a British soldier who is now a prisoner of war with the Russians. I put out an invitation to him, and he responded positively to it. An invitation to do a live stream. I'd be delighted to do it whenever it's convenient for you. So the first thing we have to do is figure out a way to get in touch with each other. So this is my suggestion. If I put out my email, I'm going to get contacted by all kinds of crazy people, and I'll never find you. Okay, so you, Aidan, what you have to do is set up a Twitter account and post a video of yourself saying, this is my Twitter account, and follow me. And what I'll do is I will get in touch with you via direct message on Twitter. That would be the most efficient way that I can think of offhand. That's all I can think of. But I think that it would be an effective way to do this. My email address is, my Twitter address rather, is at Gonzalo Lira 1968, all one word. Gonzalo Lira 1968. I put the link in the description below to this video. And I'd be delighted to do a live stream with you because I'm extremely curious about your circumstances and the situation that you are currently in. And also, I'm very interested in your time in Syria. And yeah, I'd be interested in doing a live stream at whatever time is convenient for you. So this is me reiterating my offer, and I'm thanking you very much for taking my offer seriously and thinking about it. And let's make it happen. So to anybody who sees this, tell him to set up a Twitter account and to post a video so that I know it's him, not some random guy pretending to be him. And I'll get in touch with him. I'll DM him from my account Gonzalo Lira 1968. Okay? Looking forward to it. Take it easy. So on YouTube, there's this channel called Veritasium. It's very popular. It's got several million viewers, subscribers and such. And the channel released a video about dark matter. And it called it The Absurd Search for Dark Matter. Absurd in the sense that, the search for it required to do experiments underground in all kinds of funky places and all the rest of it, right? And it got several million views, so I'm not going to link it down in the description below. You can find it for yourself, yeah, because my video needs millions of views, not Veritasium's, that's already got them. But anyway, the serious point, is that, see, in the Veritasium video, they talk about dark matter. Now, dark matter, for those of you who don't know, is that, you see, in physics, in astrophysics, there have been a series of observations, astronomical observations, and the Hubble telescope was actually instrumental in these observations, that go counter to the theory of gravity. They don't quite line up with what theory of gravity predicts should happen. And so what has happened is that because of this, this problem actually started in the 1930s, and I knew this before I watched the video, by the way, which goes into a little background of the problem. But, back in the 1930s, some astronomers were noticing the same thing, that things didn't quite line up or square away. It didn't go the way theory said it should go. And so they postulated back in the 30s something called dark matter. And it sort of like faded out and then faded back into popularity because they couldn't explain it. There was no theoretical grounds on which to explain the fact that the galaxies were not moving the way they were supposed to move according to the theory. And so rather than change the theory, they postulated dark matter. This dark matter that makes up like 70, 80% of the galaxy. It's all over the place, but you can't see it. It's like this weird pixie dust that it's not there, it's invisible, and you can't detect it by any means whatsoever, but it makes up the majority of the universe. This is an example of epistemic viciousness, as I explained in the previous video. Go and check it out. See, the physicists, and people who know this about physics hasn't really advanced very much in close to a century. Ever since really, the advent of the nuclear weapons, theoretical physics, has not really advanced. And it's spiraled into this closed loop. There are no advances in theoretical physics, and you have this kind of nonsense where they start postulating things and insisting that they exist, where there's no evidence for it whatsoever, and it accounts for a majority of the matter in the universe. This dark matter is supposed to be it, dark matter, and then there's dark energy, of course. Let's not even go into that ball of wax, right? And of course, it's because they don't want to change the theory. Because so many people's jobs depend on the theory. So many careers have been built on the theory of gravity. And so to say, oh, it doesn't work, basically means that all these people with PhDs, right, they learn shit that was make-believe, that was made up. It's not real. And that's the problem. The longer this problem goes on, insofar as physics being unable to explain reality, and it starts to devolve into these stupid theories of dark matter or dark energy, which is, the equivalent of 19th century when they came up with the ether, that out there beyond the atmosphere of the earth, there was ether. We laugh about it now because it was funny, okay? But at the time, they took it very seriously as today they take dark matter and dark energy. And it is serious because these people's jobs depend on this. And this is an example of a very important science, a hard science, a math science, that has fallen for epistemic viciousness. And the problem is that the only people carrying out high-level physics are inside this magic circle of academia. And so they're cut away from anybody who would say different, who would tell them, hey, no, this is just stupid. I can say this, but I'm not in that world. I'm not in academia. I just look at it and say, this is just dumb. But they're all there, Emperor New Clothes-like, insisting on dark energy, dark matter, and they create all of these experiments, which, by the way, companies or foundations pay good money for. And so all of a sudden, everybody has an incentive to make sure that this shit exists. Because if a foundation approves a grant for several $1 million for some experiment that will find allegedly this dark matter, then the guy who approved that check, he better come up with something. He can't say, oh no, it was all just bullshit. He can't say that. So what do they say? They say, oh, the experiment failed. They don't say, we were pursuing an ephemera, something that doesn't exist. No, they can't say that. Their reputations, their jobs depend on them saying, no, it's not that dark matter doesn't exist. It's that our experiment was not successful in finding it, so we have to do another experiment. And all these PhDs whose work depends on a set of theories that might be completely inaccurate, they can't go back on that. They can't say, oh, you know something, maybe I spent the last 25, 30 odd years based, all of my work is based on a lie, based on an erroneous theory. They can't say that. They can't. And since physics at this time has no practical application, because rather than pursue something of practical utility, physics just decided to go up its own ass, literally, okay? They didn't pursue, say, fusion. Nuclear fusion. That would be actually of practical utility. If you could figure out how to do nuclear fusion and put all of your effort into finding the theoretical way to do it properly, efficiently, then you'd have something. But there's a little bit of it that's going in that direction, but a lot more of it is going into all this theoretical bullshit. And of course what happens is that a lot of people inside the world of academic physics, those people who are inside the circle of epistemic viciousness, see, they look down on the practical applications of physics. They want it to be highfalutin, more serious. You see? And so this is an example of epistemic viciousness in, hard science. We're talking physics. We're talking, stuff that's, all about numbers and equations and shit, all good and solid, right? It's about the fucking universe. They're talking about the universe, but they're making shit up because their theories don't work. This is epistemic viciousness in physics. Understand what's going on. So in economics right now, in macroeconomic theory, there's something called modern monetary theory that you should pay attention to. It is one of those theories that when I first heard it, I thought that, they were pulling my chain. I heard about it first in 2010 from Eve Smith over at Naked Capitalism. Eve Smith, I've always thought that she's a sensible woman, just a smart woman, but she buys into this bullshit. In fact, a lot of people buy into it. And the basic idea of modern monetary theory is that, a government can spend as much money as it wants. It has no upper ceiling to its spending. Because, if it has the reserve currency, then, it's basically unchained from the normal limitations of overspending, of government overspending. And they point to the fact that the United States, over the last, 30, 40 years or whatever, back in 2010, it was 30 years, that over the last 30 years then and 40 years now, the American government has gone into such incredible debt. I mean, it has gone into so much debt that, this theory evolved. It evolved in academia. And, everybody in academia started thinking, oh, this is the new thing. MMT, modern monetary theory, is an offshoot of Keynesian economics. And the whole point of Keynesian economics is that, see, you spend money to stimulate the economy. The government spends money to stimulate the economy. And of course, it goes to these weird, paradoxes whereby, smashing windows is actually good for the economy. Because when you smash a window, then somebody has to come in and clean it up. And then somebody has to come in with new window panes. And of course, since they need new window panes, the window pane factory gears up to produce them. So destroying all the windows in a building is actually a good thing. It gives these weird, counterintuitive conclusions, Keynesianism does, that you're like, buddy, I'm not so sure, right? But everybody buys it. Everybody in economic, in the ivory tower of economics, and more to the point, you see, the people in economic academia, they are the ones who wind up running the central banks. They're the ones who wind up being the chief economists for the big banks. They're the ones. They're the ones who wind up crashing the economy, man, like they've done before. But see, nobody seems to point this out because they're captured by our good old friend, epistemic viciousness. You see, the whole theory of modern monetary theory, the whole idea behind it, is that, see, the government, the country that has the reserve currency can print up as much as it wants, right? That's the basic idea. And that there's no upper limit to how much money it can print. Inflation will never happen. This is what they actually thought, by the way. They truly did. MMT theorists said outright that inflation was impossible if you had the reserve currency. And say what was going on, the error of their ways was very obvious. You see, these people who were pushing MMT, they didn't realize, because they didn't look up. They were so looking at their theory that they didn't look up and look around. They didn't realize that the reason that the dollar was a reserve currency was that everybody else needed it because of oil. And that, you see, the 1974 deal, whereby the United States guaranteed the House of Saud's security in exchange for the House of Saud, Saudi Arabia, selling all of its oil in dollars and putting all of its excess dollar reserves into treasury bonds. Economically, it meant that Saudi Arabia became part of the United States. Economically, it meant that the OPEC nations that were all doing the same at the behest of Saudi Arabia or through subtle manipulations, economically, they were all part of America because they were taking their exports, oil, and turning them into dollars. They were receiving dollars and turning them into treasuries, into dollar-denominated assets. And so if an economist had sort of like stopped and say, hey, wait, the American economy is not just the continental United States and Alaska and Hawaii. No. The real American economy has to include the OPEC nations. Then you understand how America could have gone into so much debt. Then you understand what was maintaining the dollar's value. But of course, that would go against the theories of the economists, because you know what the first thing they'd say? They'd say, oh no, that has nothing to do with economics. What you're talking about is politics, geopolitics, but we're talking about economics. This is economics here and geopolitics over there, and we don't like it, and so we're not going to talk about it, and we're just going to ignore it. And we're going to come up with our fancy, highfalutin theories of modern monetary theory bullshit. You see? Once again, this epistemic viciousness, this circle of people in academia, divorced from reality, divorced from how reality is having an enormous impact on precisely the thing that they are studying. They ignored the whole issue of the petrodollar. They ignored the whole issue that the countries around the world were obliged to buy dollars, and that is what kept the dollar strong. Instead, they looked at the effects on the American economy, and they looked at the fact that the United States would go into all of this debt and nothing would happen to it, and they say, oh, if you have the reserve currency, it's like a magic wand. You can do whatever you want. And they looked at the very issue of having a reserve currency as some magical quality divorced from reality. you read the modern monetary theory literature, and it is fucking hilarious, man. Because they treat the reserve currency status of the dollar as if it's like being left-handed or having blue eyes. They don't realize that it is the effect of something, and that they should be studying what is causing this particular effect of the dollar's reserve currency status. They don't look at that at all. They just posit it as like some sort of magic. And they run from there. And from there, they came up with all kinds of, I mean, look, dude, I've read some of these papers, man, all kinds of like math equations and all kinds of heavy duty shit way above my head, man. Like, zoom, you know what I'm talking about? Like all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, well, economics back in the 70s, they wholesale imported physics to give economics the patina of intellectual respectability. But the fact of the matter is, all this physics that they imported, all these equations and all this crap, it's just so much bullshit, you know? I mean, it's no different from some bum off the street who gets into a suit, made at Savile Row and pretends that he's a gentleman. You're like, dude, you're not. You're just some bum off the street, dressing up like a lord from some manor, but you're not a lord from no manor. You're just a bum off the street in a nice suit. That's exactly what economics did when they imported physics and all of this, the math of physics. But be that as it may, you look at the MMT literature, and a lot of it, like I'm telling you, man, it's got all kinds of this physics shit. I find it funny because they are trying so desperately to give intellectual respectability to what they're doing. And what they're basically doing is living in a fantasy land. And why am I picking on MMT? Well, because that is the dominant theory of the Biden administration. And a lot of guys who are formerly Keynesians, even people like, Paul Krugman, you call him MMT and he's going to fight you on it, right? But in terms of what he's actually pushing, he is an MMT. They posit a reality that doesn't match reality. Their theories are based on their imagination. They don't understand why they are in the position that they are. And so, why is this important? Because the United States government has been pursuing policies over the last 36 months at least, you could argue since way back in 2008, that are going to lead to the complete collapse of the American dollar and the complete annihilation of the American economy. Simple as. That is what they have been doing. And they have, painted up this sow's ear in this intellectually highfalutin makeup of MMT. I'm mixing my metaphors horribly, but you get the point of the gist of what I'm saying. They use all kinds of formulas and math and all kinds of bullshit to dress up the fact that they basically took the American national credit card and have been zipping it up and down through the machine until it's busted out. And this is an example of epistemic viciousness in economics. And this is catastrophic, not just for the United States, it's going to be a catastrophe for the whole fucking world. The world economy, in the West at least, is going to suffer catastrophically because of this. And so you see what happens here. You see when you have people who they are the elite, they are the leadership of a particular very crucial segment of our civilization. But they have no vision beyond their very limited purview. And they don't dare look up and look around. And in point of fact, there's been so much pressure on economists who have heterodox opinions that, they've left. A lot of these guys wound up going into the private sector and made a shit ton of fucking money with their heterodox opinions. I mean, why am I going to waste my fucking time trying to convince retards of what I think insofar as economics when I could just apply what I think to the real world and make myself a whole boatload of fucking money? You see my point? Epistemic viciousness in economics is going to lead to the complete collapse of the Western economies. Know what's going on.